Okay, so for this video, we are going to learn something something new. So this one says the function has a vertex at 2, comma, -6 and passes through the point 0, -2. We can use those two bits of information to write the equation in this format, right? The vertex format. So if we have, I'm just going to write this down. If we have the vertex, so v, 2, comma, -6, that means that if we're looking at this equation, h is going to be equal to 2 and k is going to be equal to -6. -6. Okay, so we know that bit of information when I go to put these numbers into our equation. The other thing we know here is that there's a point 0, -2. For the time being, we're going to put those points into this equation as well. So point 0, comma, -2. Where I'm going to put those is the x value here, 0. I'm going to put that in place of x in my equation. So I'm going to, x will be equal to 0. And I'm going to call y, or -2. Now, the whole reason we did that is because when I look at this equation, I know everything from, the vertex and these points. I know my h, I know my k, I know my x, and I know my y, right? The bit I don't know is the a. So what we're going to do is put all these numbers in, the 4 that I just put up here, and then we're going to use those numbers to solve for a. Then when we know what a is, we can just put a back in the formula and everything else in there except for the x and y. Okay, so let's start putting numbers in and then solve for a. So if we write, I'm just going to put it right underneath this formula. So I'm going to rewrite this as y. Actually, I'm going to put, instead of y, I'm going to put -2. -2, because that's what we said y was, is equal to, a is the one we don't know yet, so I'm just going to keep that as an a, comma, x, they said was going to be equal to 0, h was 2, so -2, squared, plus, and k was -6. So I'm going to change this right now. Instead of plus negative, I'm just going to call that negative, or -6. Okay, now all we have to do is solve for a. So if we do that, let's simplify this a little bit more. We've got, that just turns into -2 is equal to a times -2 squared. So -2 squared minus 6. Maybe I'm writing this down, too many things down. It's equal to a. Now, don't mess this up. -2 squared is 4. So times 4 minus 6. Now, what we have to do is get the a on its own, right? So this -6 has to go over. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So those cancel. Plus 6. So I've got 4 on this side is equal to, I'm going to rewrite this as just 4a instead of a times 4. Now, multiplied, it's right now it's 4 times a, so we got to divide 4. So divide 4, divide 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so a is equal to 1. Okay, now we know everything we need to know. So all we got to do is plug in everything but the y and the x. For this to be a normal equation, we don't have numbers in place of y and x. So we're going to leave those as just y and x, but then put the numbers in that we know for everything else. Maybe I'll put over here, a is equal to 1. Okay, so all I got to do is write my formula now. Y is equal to, a was 1, so it's just kind of blank, or I'll put a 1 there, I guess. And then x minus, minus h, so that was minus, what did we say h was? 2. So x minus 2 squared. And then k was -6, so minus 6. And there's our equation. So that's the formula for this line. Okay, next one says, what are the zeros of the function? So that was our formula in vertex form. This form is really no good for figuring out what our zeros are or what our x-intercepts are. So we got to change that back. We got to switch that back to our standard form. So I'm just going to write it again right here. Y is equal to x minus 2 squared minus 6. And what we have to do to get that back in standard form is just expand this entire thing. So what I need to do is go x minus 2 and then times x minus 2 minus 6. Need to expand this, so that one times that times that, that times that, that times that. And this becomes x times x was x squared, and then minus 2x, minus 2x again, and then plus 4. And then minus 6. If we collect all of our like terms, I've got these are like terms and these are like terms. This becomes x squared minus 4x minus 2. All right, so now to be able to find our x-intercepts for this thing, it has to be when y is equal to 0, right? That's what I want. I want that y to be equal to 0 for that to happen. And looking at this, I can't actually factor this very nicely, right? I can't really think of anything that multiplies to -2 and adds to -4. So we got to use this quadratic formula. Plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so b in this case was -4. Plus or minus square root -4 squared minus 4. A in this case was just 1. C was -2. So this will end up turning into, well, I'll just write this as like 4 because it's minus -4, so that's just positive 4. Plus or minus square root -4 squared is positive 16. And then I have a minus sign and then the -2 here, so this really becomes plus. And then 4 times 2 is 8. Whoop, and I forgot in the one above to write all over 2 times 1. Okay, and I'll do that again. So all over 2 times 1. If I simplify that just a little bit more, this becomes 4 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 2. Now the last thing, like this is pretty much it too, right? Like this will be your x solutions too. But if you were to simplify this thing completely, like as low as it would go, then the way you should write this is we need to write this entire radical as a mixed radical. We can take stuff out of the radical symbol. So let's remind you how that looks. I can rewrite the square root of 24 as the square root of 6 times 4. And the reason why I did that is because 4 is a perfect square. So if it's a perfect square, I don't need it underneath the square root symbol. I can actually take it out. But when I do, I have to take the square root of it. So when I do that, this becomes x is equal to 4 plus or minus 2 root 6 over 2. And then the last thing, you can think about it as, you're going to divide that and that by 2, and then this becomes, 2, so they cancel. Or you can think about factoring out and then canceling. So what that would look like, 4, 2, 2, is that we could factor out a 2 out of this top. So this would be 2, and then 4 plus or minus. And now I factored, oh, sorry, not 4. I factored out a 2. So 2 plus or minus square root 6 over 2, and then those cancel. So what we end up with, our two solutions here are 2 plus or minus square root 6. Okay, last one. What's the range of the function? These ones are pretty simple. As soon as you know the vertex, you have it made. So our vertex of this one, right? It even told us right in the equation was 2, -6. So if our vertex is at 2, -6, if we kind of did like just a really rough sketch of that, then we've got 2, -6, maybe it's down there somewhere. And I also know that A was equal to positive number, right? It was a positive number out front of our equation, so positive A. That means our graph is going to be opening up. So it's going to be looking something like that, right? With our vertex at 2, -6. So if I need to know my range, that's the y, right? So y will be greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. It's kind of the way you start all of these. It's got to be greater than or equal to the y value at this point. So it's got to be greater than or equal to -6. And less than or equal to infinity. So that's one way of writing the range. The other way of writing the range, you might just say y is greater than or equal to -6. You might see it like that too. I gotta fix my pen for the next video. Okay, either one is correct. You'll see like either one kind of written sometimes. So okay, so that's how you guys do those ones. Yeah, so go ahead and I want you to try these questions here.